Greetings, Nick with Sweetwater here, and today we're going to be attempting to emulate 4 groundbreaking rock tones from the 60s and early 70s without breaking the bank. So in order to do this, we're going to be using pedals to try and get as close as we possibly can. Perhaps close enough for rock and roll is a more apt and also accurate mission statement here. We're going to tackle the 4 pretty darn pivotal tones I've chosen from that time window in chronological order. And just to whet your appetite, the 4 great tone masters and riff writers I've picked are as follows: Eric Clapton, Jimi Hendrix, Jimmy Page, and Mr. Tony Iommi. Not a bad collection of fine guitar players. And by the way, as great as it is, Iron Man is not one of the songs under the microscope here. Before we get started though, one quick thing. I've already started working on a follow-up video to this one, and the time period will be from 1972 to the early 80s. I've already got 5 killer tones in mind, but would love to know what you think they should be. So please, please, please put your ideas in the comments below. I can't wait to see your thoughts. The pedal platform amp I'm going to be using for this is the highly affordable 50-watt Blackstar Debut 50R 1x12 combo. And I'm going to be using its clean channel with just a smidgen of the built-in reverb. Here's what it sounds like by itself. Very, very clean, so all the dirt you'll hear will be coming from these fine affordable pedals on this table. This said, our first tone cloning attempt is from 1966. Time for a quick guitar change though to an Epiphone 60s Les Paul standard and a pedal change too. Do you recognize that riff? If you don't, please don't fret. After all, it's as old as I am. It's actually the intro riff of a song called Stepping Out that's on an album recorded over 57 years ago. This one right here. Yes, sir, the legendary John Mayall Blues Breakers with Eric Clapton LP released in 1966. Thanks to Eric Clapton's fiery guitar playing and equally fiery tone, the impact this album had on the rock guitar world was profound. It might seem somewhat passé in today's high-gain world, but back then it was a game-changing sonic moment in rock history. Hence its deserved inclusion here. Clapton's tone was created with a Gibson Les Paul plugged straight into a Marshall Model 1962 30-watt 2x12 tube combo, quite literally cranked to the max. In fact, the resulting sound of this album became so famous that the combo in question is now affectionately known as the Blues Breaker. And just so you know, Stepping Out is actually a cover of a 1959 Memphis Slim track. Anyways, to ape this tone, I used an Epiphone Les Paul and a Marshall pedal called, wait for it, yep, you've guessed it, the Blues Breaker. As its name clearly implies, this amp-in-a-box pedal is a blues breaker in a box. This fine pedal does what it claims to do well, very, very well indeed. As a result, it's one of the most revered and also copied overdrive pedals out there. Incidentally, there's been much internet speculation that Clapton might have possibly used the Dallas Rangemaster treble booster on certain songs in the studio, but that's never been verified. Apparently, Eric himself can't remember, and the device can't be seen in any of the handful of photographs taken in the studio either, so it remains a mystery. To my ears, the Blues Breaker pedal ticks the box pretty well all by itself though. Another pedal that does a fine job of emulating the sound of a cranked blues breaker, which basically, as you probably know, is just a Marshall JTM 45 head in combo form, is this one here, the JHS Charlie Brown. A good one, my friend, a good one. Anyway, brief tonal trivia excursion over. For the next riff, I'm going to change to an affordable Fender Player Strat, and we're going to move forward a year to 1967. groundbreaking bad boy of a riff was, of course, Purple Haze from Jimi Hendrix's stunning 1967 debut release, this one right here. Are you experienced by the Jimi Hendrix experience? If you don't own this, do it right now. Get online, buy it! In addition to a Strat, and of course his phenomenal talent, Jimi used a 100-watt all-tube Marshall Super Lead and also a Roger Mayer Octavia fuzz pedal on this particular track. So, to mimic that signal pass without breaking the proverbial bank, I'm using a mini Wampler Plexi Drive amp-in-a-box pedal to emulate the cranked Marshall Super Lead sound, and an MXR/octave fuzz pedal to do, well, wait for it, the octave fuzz. Oh yeah, and just so you know, there's also a bigger Wampler Plexi Drive pedal called the Deluxe. This one right here. They're both really cool. For this legendary intro riff that I just massacred, I used both pedals and also the bridge pickup on this Fender Strat. Then for the rhythmic chordal stuff that follows, I just used the Wampler Plexi Drive by itself to give the chords more clarity. The amazing solo in this song kicks in after this neat 3-bar climb into it. Then at that point, I quickly switch over to my neck pickup, which really accentuates the upper octave in the fuzz for the solo. Here we go. Then after that amazing solo, which I totally butchered by the way, I go back to the bridge pickup for the revisitation of that classic main intro riff. If you're looking for a great, affordable Jimi Hendrix fuzz sound, sans the octave by the way, I highly recommend this fine mini Dunlop Authentic Hendrix 68 Shrine Series fuzz face pedal. The combination of this pedal with the mini Wampler Plexi Drive is just killer, and talk about taking up minimal space on your pedal board. Oh yeah, and for some really interesting and affordable octave fuzz options, the MXR Octavio is a really cool option, as is the Electro Harmonix Lizard King, this one here, and the wonderfully named Orange Fur Coat, this bad boy right here. To close this little section, here's a little bit of interesting rock trivia. According to the legendary Mr. Roger Mayer himself, Jimi used a Telecaster to record his Purple Haze solo. Who would have thunk it? Fascinating. Anyway, time for another guitar and pedal change. In 1969, 4 British chaps named Robert, Jimmy, John, and another John released their sophomore album, and boy did it have an impact. In fact, it made it to the #1 position on both the American and UK album charts. The album in question is this one right here, Led Zeppelin II. One of the most famous riffs on Led Zeppelin II, and of all time incidentally, is the very first one you hear when you put the album on, and the song quickly became a million-selling single in America. I am of course referring to the epic Whole Lotta Love, and its simple yet unforgettably catchy riff that merely utilizes 3 notes with 1 power chord, this one right here. The 3 notes in question are B at the 7th fret on the low E string, D at the 5th fret on the A string, the low open E string, plus an E5 power chord in the 7th position. Whenever you play the all-important D note though, you don't just play the note at the 5th fret on the A string. No sir, you also hit the open D string note at the same time and then bend the D on the A string slightly so the 2 notes rub together just like this. Hear what I mean? It's subtle, but it makes a huge difference. And it's the Jimmy Page way. So of course it sounds great. Just so you know, here's the riff without that simple but effective trick. And here it is with said trick. Both sound cool, but in my humble opinion, the second one is the clear winner here. No contest, in fact. Anyway, the pedals I'm using to mimic this legendary recording as best I can are as follows. The JHS Bender Fuzz into a Victory copper pedal, which does an excellent emulation of the tone of the legendary Vox AC30. And I can hear what you're thinking, or shouting at the screen even. But why on earth aren't you just using the Wampler Plexi Drive again? Jimmy Page was the Marshall Super League guy! That's a good question, my friends, so let me explain without shouting. While Jimmy's indeed synonymous with the Marshall Super League Plexi head, in fact didn't introduce one into his backline until 1970, and this record was made in 1969. And furthermore, according to the man himself, he used a Vox amp when recording Whole Lotta Love. As for the JHS Bender, well, just like his peers Jimi Hendrix and Jeff Beck, Mr. Page loved using a tone bender fuzz pedal back in the day. To that end, to my ears, the JHS Bender does a truly fine job of adding that Jimmy Page-esque subtle fuzzy edge, plus some hair and compression to my sound, especially when I crank its volume knob and roll back the fuzz level. Yes sir, believe it or not, those legendary Led Zeppelin distorted tones are not as dirty as you think. In fact, I'm probably playing that one too dirty, if truth be told. Yep, works for me. Oh, one other quick tip for playing this legendary riff as close to the Jimmy Page way as possible. When you play the second half of the riff, the chugging part if you will, use alternate picking please, just like this. This is not a Metallica riff, so downstrokes only on the palm muted low E string just doesn't really work. It just sounds way too aggressive. Check it out. Yeah, that was pretty aggressive, wasn't it? And to my ears, the alternate picking way is much more laid back and bluesy, if you will. And in fact, if you watch old videos of Zeppelin playing Whole Lotta Love live, that's exactly how Mr. Page picks it, so I rest my case. Alternative picking is the way to go. As for the Searing lead tone Jimmy gets on those 4 legendary E minor licks he plays in between these chords, the secret is a simple one and it involves a wah pedal. You just switch the sucker on and then leave it closed. To illustrate this, I'm going to enlist my trusty Dunlop Zakk Wylde Crybaby wah. Here's the first lick I'm talking about with the wah pedal off. That sounded pretty good, but there's something missing in my humble opinion. So let's hear it again with the wah pedal switched on and left closed. Hear what I mean? Makes all the difference, doesn't it, that closed wah? Now here's the following 3 licks that I will of course butcher. Close enough for rock and roll. This is a great trick, a simple but often overlooked one, so try it out sometimes. Your leads will cut, I promise. And incidentally, please don't forget to use reverb when playing Mr. Page's wonderful stuff. As he once said in an interview I read many moons ago, distance gives your sound depth, or something to that effect. And he is of course referring to reverb there, and probably echo too. That said, time for our 4th and final riff, plus another guitar and pedal change. And this time I'm going to change to a super affordable Epiphone Cherry SG Standard. In 1970, a bloke from Birmingham, England, with 2 plastic fingertips on his fretboard hand, wrote one of the most famous opening metal riffs of all time. This one right here. I am, of course, talking about the undisputed all-time master of metal riffs, Mr. Tony Iommi of Black Sabbath. His tone back then was an SG into a Laney 100-watt head being front-ended by a modified Dallas Rangemaster. And as luck would have it, our pals over at Catlin Bread have created a pedal that does exactly that, the aptly named Sabracadabra, complete with a volume control labeled 4. Get it? Perfect! Yes sir, the Sabracadabra pedal definitely does what it says on the tin. Oh, just so you know, While you can play this classic metal riff in the 7th position like this, that sounds good, but that's not where Tony Iommi plays it. He instead plays it at the 12th fret because it sounds darker and more ominous to his ears, just like this. I concur, and as that's where the godfather of metal plays this classic metal riff, in my opinion, that's the only place to play it. Got it? As for the Paranoid solo, which I opened this video with, an effect called the ring modulator was added to Tony's solo by the album's producer. Thus, I used the DoD gonculator pedal to try and recreate the robotic, detuned ring modulation chaos of this now iconic recorded version of the solo. To be exact, Tony's unaffected guitar is on the left side of the track's mix, while the ring-modulated Mayhem is on the right. Ironically, Tony's initial reaction to his solo with this effect added was, "What the hell is that? It sounds horrible!" Despite the guitar player's feelings though, that's what ended up on the album, and Tony has since admitted that he's gotten used to it. Let's quickly check out the gonculator ring modulation pedal, shall we? I must admit, while it does sound, well, just a hair weird, I kind of like it. That's a cool effect, but use it sparingly, I'd suggest. Use it sparingly. And incidentally, if you've already got a crunchy Sabbath-like sound you like on your amp, Laney offer a killer signature Tony Iommi boost pedal, which not only emulates Tony's modified Rangemaster pedal, but also offers some other great tonal options too. This bad boy right here. Yes sir, this Laney Black Country Customs TI booster is perfect for punishing the front end of an already dirty amp and pushing it way into Tony Iommi territory. Hence the reason it proudly bears his signature on its front panel. And there you have it, my friend, my best attempt at aping 4 iconic tones that were created between 1966 and 1970. And as old as they may be, this quartet definitely had a seismographic sonic impact on the sound of rock as we know and love it today. In fact, I call them timeless tones for this very reason. I sincerely hope you enjoyed this video. I have no doubt that when you get your mitts on these pedals that I've just used, you'll get even closer to the tones in question than I did. Links to the amp, the guitars and all the stomp boxes I use can be found below. And the pedals I used are not only great for mimicking famous tones from yesteryear, they're also perfect tools for creating some unique tones of your own this very day. I realize, of course, that of the 4 tones I've covered, 3 were British and only 1 was American. That said, the next video, which will go from 1970 to 1980, will have at least 3 tones from this side of the Atlantic, I promise. And like I said earlier, if you've got any suggestions for guitar tones you'd like to see me try and emulate via affordable pedals, please drop them in the comments below. Ditto your best guesses of the 5 tones I've already chosen to cover next. If you'd like to know more about any of the gear I shamelessly abused today, please go to sweetwater.com, or better still, contact your oh-so-friendly sales engineer. That said, I'm out of here. See ya!